So it finally happened. I came back to my car to find a parking charge notice. And not a yellow one either. It's a red one, interestingly enough. But it's at this point that I make the distinction that it is a parking charge notice, not a penalty charge notice. The difference being a penalty is a fine issued by a local authority or other authorised officer, and a parking charge notice is just a private invoice alleging breach of contract, which I dispute, obviously. And for this video, I'm going to tell you the broad circumstances of what happened, why I dispute it, and the broad contents of my appeal, which I've lodged already today, the day of issue of this thing. And I will come back and let you know whether they've been reasonable to accept my justification for why I dispute the alleged breach of contract. So this parking sign had two broad terms in it. One, that you must be parked within a bay, and two, that it's permit only and you must have a permit displayed. Now, my vehicle did display a valid permit. I can't show you the permit because it will show you exactly where we are, and I'm not going to do that. But the vehicle did display a valid permit. The only thing is, it was on the driver's seat because I presume it had been blown off the dashboard because the windows were ajar because it was very hot this week. So it may have been blown onto the seat. But the key point here is it was face up, it was still visible, perfectly readable from the outside because it had in big bold letters parking permit and then which bay that it was allocated to. So anybody standing at that point to put this thing on my windscreen would have been standing at the point that you could see directly in to where this thing was sitting on the seat. Now, I think it a little bit overzealous for a parking attendant to just slap this on and not to glance to the left to see the parking permit on the seat. Now, admittedly, it wasn't on the dashboard, but it doesn't say anywhere in the terms and conditions whatsoever that it must be on the dashboard. It just says that it needs to be visible, because that's what makes common sense. It would need to be visible to alert the parking attendant that you have a valid permit, which I do. It was just on the seat and not on the dashboard. If they only looked on the dashboard, then yes, quite feasibly, they didn't see it. However, I dispute that because where they were standing, as I said, to place this on the dashboard in the first place, imagine you are now the vehicle and this bit is the dashboard and the seat is just there. Then they were standing right here. They would have had to place this there on the windscreen. And you can look there and you would have seen the permit on the seat. So standing right here with the dashboard there, the seat there, you would have seen straight through the window and you get the picture. You would have seen the permit on the seat. Now, I've put all this very nicely and politely to say that I've complied with the terms of the contract to park in the allotted bay with my parking permit, and therefore this is not valid. I've given the time and the date and all the reference numbers and everything else. I've even said that I've done it on the same day so as to avoid them incurring any further costs. There's an important distinction there, because if later on they say we've had to expend all of these charges chasing you for the money and this sort of stuff, my point there would be, well, no, you didn't, because I submitted this appeal on the same day within a couple of hours, I think, because there's an important distinction I'll come back to in a moment, which is the reaction to these things. Now, I did that on the same day, so if they come back later and say we've incurred all these extra costs, I will say, well, no, you haven't, because I told you within a couple of hours why it was that your attendant missed the parking permit and shouldn't have done. Any reasonable, objective person, especially if they are trained to issue what most people think of as a fine, it's not a fine, it's a parking charge. It's an invoice for breach of contract. But any person that is trained and authorized to put these on the windscreen for a private company ought to at least have a quick glance around. I'm not saying they need to go hunting for it. So if it's in the rear window or in the back seat, that might be more problematic. But even then, if it's in the rear window, it's still visible. It would still comply with the terms of the contract. It's still a visible parking permit. So the mere fact that this was on the seat should not negate anything at all. And it'd be interesting to see if they refuse the appeal and if it goes to court, what a judge would say. Because objectively, perfectly reasonably, this was visible to anybody standing there. But coming back to my immediate reaction to this, we were walking out to the beach and I picked this up and I was, as you can probably understand, a little bit annoyed because they want £100 for this, or reduced to, I think, £60 if paid within 14 days, the usual way of it. So my immediate reaction when we were walking to the beach was look through the notice, find where to appeal. I found the website and my plan was to find somewhere secluded on the beach, sit there, try and get internet access and fire off my appeal immediately because I was a bit annoyed about it. But then the lawyer kicked in and said, no, just wait until you come back. Do it in good time. Take your time over it, do it properly. Come back, look at the signs. Look at what the signs say. What are the terms? Does it make any reference to it must be on the dashboard? In which case, even that might be unreasonable, but it doesn't say that regardless. So it doesn't say that it has to be on the dashboard. It just says that it's got to be visible. It's got to be displayed. So I overruled my own immediate reaction, which was to sit down and deal with it there and then, in not quite a fit of rage, but certainly slightly more annoyed than I would have been for any other client, let's say. So I came back perfectly calm and took photographs of the signs. I converted all of the text of the signs to a document so that if I need it later, I can rely on it and I've got the text for it. And nowhere does it say that it's got to be anywhere else. So I looked at all the signs. By the way, some of the small print was tiny, really was small print, so there's no way that you would read that unless you go right up close to it. And one of those, which is a term that I would refute, says that if you fail to pay, that they will charge costs against you on the indemnity, costs and interest against you on the indemnity basis, which is, in simple terms, the court's way of punishing somebody for conducting litigation poorly. Now, that would be different to an indemnity, as indemnifying them against certain costs, but the phrasing of it, you are responsible for costs on the indemnity basis, that's not something that they can put in a contract. It would be unfair and thus unenforceable, in my view. And it's only something that a court can order if you've been unreasonably behaved throughout the litigation. But this is where another point comes in. If you're responding to these things, do it calmly, do it politely, do it promptly, give them all the information they need. I sent photographs in, I gave them the GPS stamps, the time stamps and everything to show this is where I was. I took a photograph of the notice before I removed it, within seconds of taking a photograph of the permit, which was on the chair, which was clearly visible from the point at which that I would reach out to put this notice on the dashboard, and took a photograph from the same position of the chair, and you can clearly see and read the permit on the chair. So I sent all of that off. That's gone off now. They've got, I think, 28 days to come back to me with a response on that appeal. If that fails, I can take it to the adjudication service. If that fails, what will I do? I will say, okay, fine, take me to court then. I'll see you in court, because I think this is perfectly reasonable explanation as to why they might have missed it. But ultimately, this was unjustly and invalidly issued. So that's my little story for the day. If that helps anybody in any way, shape or form, even if it's just don't react of the heat of the moment and take your time to do it properly, then it might well put you in a better position to defend these things. But there it is. That's my little story. So thank you for watching. Please do remember to hit that like button and subscribe and hit the notification bell, because 60% of you don't, and I really appreciate it when you do. So that's all that I ask. And in the meantime, thank you for watching.